All right, hello. This is going to be interesting because in the background you'll see my two kids. I don't know if their heads will pop up a little bit. There's one little head over in that direction. Eli and Caitlin are back there. They're down here for the reading too. They might cough every once in a while. You can kind of see Eli's head kind of poking up over there. See, there he is. That's Eli. He wants to be down here for the recording. Lemony Snicket, Series of Unfortunate Events. The 10th book will start here. It's called The Slippery Slope. Okay, so they just left with Count Olaf. And here we go with chapter 1. Don't forget, they're back there somewhere. They might pop up, or they might say Olaf or something. I don't know. We'll see what they do, but it should make the video just a little bit more interesting than me just sitting here talking. So, all right, here we go with chapter 1. Yeah, just ignore their coughs because they're just getting over a cold. So, all right, but anyways, here we go. Chapter 1. A man of my acquaintance once wrote a poem called The Road Less Traveled, describing a journey he took through the woods along a path most travelers never used. The poet found that the road was less traveled and peaceful, but quiet, lonely, and he was probably a bit nervous as he went along because if anything happened on the road less traveled, the other travelers would be on the road more frequently traveled, and so couldn't hear him as if he cried for help. Sure enough, the poet is now dead. Like a dead poet, this book can be said to be on the road to less traveled because it begins with the three Ballidaire children on a path leading through the Mortman Mountains, which is not a popular destination for travelers, and it ends in the churning waters of the stricken stream, which few travelers even go near. But this book is also on the road less traveled because, unlike books most people prefer, which providing comfort and entertaining tales about charming people and talking animals, the tales you are reading is now nothing but distressing and unnerving, and the people unfortunate enough to be in this story are far more desperate and frantic than charming, and I would prefer not to speak about the animals at all. For that reason, I can no more suggest the reading of this woeful book than I can recommend wandering around the woods by yourself, because like the road less traveled, this book is likely to make you feel lonely, miserable, and in need of help. Ballidaire orphans, however, had no choice but to be on the road less traveled. Violet and Klaus, the two older Ballidaires, were in the caravan traveling very quickly along the high mountain peak. Neither Violet, who was 14, nor Klaus, who had recently turned 13, had ever thought that they would find themselves on the road, perhaps with their parents on a family vacation, but the Ballidaire parents were nowhere to be found, after a terrible fire destroying their home. Although the children had reason to believe that one parent may not have died in the blaze after all, and the caravan was not heading up Mortman Mountains towards the secret headquarters the siblings had heard about and were hoping to find. The caravan was heading down the Mortman Mountains very quickly with no way to be controlled to stop its journey, so Violet and Klaus felt more like fish in a stormy sea than travelers on vacation. But Sonny was in a situation that could be said to even more desperate. Sonny was the youngest Ballidaire, still learning to speak in ways that everyone could understand, so she scarcely had words for how frightened she was. Sonny was traveling uphill toward the headquarters in the Mortman Mountains in an automobile that was working perfectly, but the driver of the automobile was a man who had reason enough for being terrified. Some people called this man wicked. Some called him furious, which is a fancy word for wicked. But everyone called him Count. Guess no one's saying Olaf around here. Count?
Olaf!
Oh, I heard it. Count Olaf. Unless he was wearing one of his ridiculous disguises and making people call him the false name. Count
Olaf!
was an actor, but he had largely abandoned his theatrical career to try to steal the enormous fortune the Ballidaire parents had left behind. Olaf's schemes were try to get the fortune, had not been mean-spirited and particularly complicated, but nevertheless he managed to attract a girlfriend. A villainous and stylish woman named Esme,
Voila.
who was sitting next to Count
Olaf.
in a car, crackling nastily and clutching Sonny on her lap. Also, in the car were several employees of Olaf's, including the man with the hooks instead of hands, two women who liked to wear white powder all over their faces, and three new comrades Olaf had recently recruited at the Krigley Carnival. The Ballidaire children had been at the carnival too, wearing disguises of their own, and had pretended to join Count and his treachery, but the villain had seen through their ruse, a phrase here which means realized who they really were, and cut the knot attaching the caravan to the car, leaving Sonny in Olaf's clutches and her sibling tumbling towards their doom. Sonny sat in the car and felt Esme's long fingernails scratch her shoulders and worried about what was going to happen to her and what was happening to her other siblings, as she heard the screams getting fainter and fainter as the car drew further and further away. "We have to stop this caravan," Klaus screamed. Hurriedly, he put on his glasses as if by improving his vision might be able to improve his situation. But even in perfect focus, he could see that their predicament was dire. The caravan had served as a home for several performers at the carnival's home, of freaks before they defected, a word here which means join count,
Hola.
band, and revolting comrades. And now the contents of his tiny home were rattling and crashing with each bump in the road. Klaus ducked to avoid this roasting pan, with which Hugo the hunchback had used to prepare meals, and had toppled off the shelf in commotion. He lifted his feet from the floor and set dominoes skittered by, a set that Colette, the contortionist, had liked to play with, and he squinted above the hammock swung violently overhead. An ambidextrous person named Kevin used to sleep in his hammock until he had joined Olaf's troop, along with Hugo and Colette. And now it seemed like they might fall at any moment and trap the Boydares beneath it. The only comforting thing that Klaus could see was his sister, who was looking around the caravan with a fierce and thoughtful expression, and unbuttoning the shirt the two siblings were sharing as part of their disguise. "Help me get out of this freakish pants we're both in," Violet said. "There's no use pretending we're a two-headed person anymore, and we both need to be as able-bodied as possible." In moments, the two Boydares wriggled out of the oversized clothing they had taken from Count,
Hola.
disguised kid, and were standing in regular clothes, trying to balance in the shaky caravan. Klaus quickly stepped out of the path of the falling potted plant, but he couldn't help smiling as he looked at his sister. Violet was tying her hair up in a ribbon to keep it out of her eyes, a sure sign that she was thinking up an invention. Violet's impressive mechanical skills had saved the Boydares' lives more times than they could count. Klaus was certain that his sister could concoct something that could stop the caravan's perilous journey. "Are you going to make a break?" Klaus asked. "Not yet." You can see him down there. He's over in that corner. "Not yet," Violet said. "A break interferes with the wheels of a vehicle, and this caravan's wheels are spinning too quickly to interfere. I'm going to unhook these hammocks and use them as a drag chute." "Drag chute?" Klaus said. "Drag chutes are like little parachutes attached to the back of a car," Violet explained. Hurriedly, as they contract clatter around her, she reached up to the hammock where she and Klaus had slept while quickly detaching it from the wall. Race drivers use them to help stop their cars when a race is over. If I dangle these hammocks out of the caravan door, we should be able to slow down considerably. "What can I do?" Klaus said. "Look in Hugo's pantry," Violet said, "and see if you can find anything sticky." When someone tells you to do something unusual without an explanation, it's very difficult not to ask why. But Klaus learned long ago to have faith in his sister's ideas, and quickly crossed to a large cupboard Hugo had used to store ingredients for the meals he had prepared. The door of the cupboard was swinging back and forth as if a ghost were fighting it, but most of the items were still rattling around inside. Klaus looked at the cupboard and thought of his baby sister, who was getting farther and farther away from him. Even though Sunny was still quite young, she had recently shown an interest in cooking, and Klaus remembered how she had made up her own hot chocolate recipe. That sounds good. And helped prepare a delicious soup the entire caravan had enjoyed. Klaus held the cupboard door open and peered inside, and hoped that his sister would survive to develop her culinary skills. "Klaus!" Violet said firmly, taking down another hammock and trying to get to the first one. "I don't mean to rush you, but we need to stop this caravan as soon as possible. Have you found anything sticky?" Klaus blinked and returned to the task at hand. A ceramic pitcher rolled around at his feet, and he pushed through the bottles and jars of cooking materials. "There's lots of sticky things here," he said. "I see blackstrap molasses, wild clover, honey, corn syrup, aged balsamic vinegar, apple butter, strawberry jam, caramel sauce, maple syrup, butterscotch topping. Now I'm getting hungry. Maraschino liqueur, virgin and extra virgin olive oil, lemon curd, dried apricots, mango chutney, creme de noces, tamarind paste, hot mustard, marshmallows, creamed corn, peanut butter, grape preserves, saltwater taffy, condensed milk, pumpkin pie filling, and glue. I don't know why Hugo kept glue in the pantry, but never mind. Which items do you want? All of them, Violet said firmly. Find some way of mixing them together while I tie these hammocks together. Klaus grabbed a pitcher from the floor and began to pour the ingredients into it, while Violet, sitting on the floor to make it easier to balance, gathered the cords of the hammocks in her lap and began twisting them into a knot. The caravan's journey grew rougher and rougher, and with each jolt, the Blydares felt a little bit seasick if they were back on Lake Lachrymose, crossing the stormy waters to try to rescue one of their many unfortunate guardians. But despite the turmoil around them, in moments Violet stood up with the hammocks gathered in her arms, all tied together in a mass of fabric, and Klaus looked at his sister and held up the pitcher, which was filled to the brim with a thick and colorful slime. When I say the word, Violet said, I'm going to open the door and cast these hammocks out. I want you at the other end of the caravan, Klaus. Open that little window and pour the mixture all over the wheel. If the hammocks work and drag the chute and the sticky substance interferes with the wheels, the caravan should slow down enough just to save us. I just need to tie the hammock to the doorknob. Are you using the devil's tongue knot? Klaus asked. The devil's tongue hasn't brought us best luck, Violet said, referring to several previous rope-related escapades. I'm using the sumac, a knot invented myself. I named it after a singer I admire. There, it feels secure. Are you ready to pour that mixture on the wheels? I'd be ready to eat it. Well, minus the glue. Klaus crossed the window, opened it. The wild clattering sound of the caravan's wheel grew louder, and the Blydares stared for a moment at the countryside racing by. The land was jagged and twisty, and it seemed that the caravan could tumble at any moment into a hole or off the edge of one of the mountain's square peaks. I guess I'm ready, Klaus said, hesitantly. Violet, before we try our invention, I want to tell you something. If we don't try it now, Violet said grimly, we won't have the chance to tell anything. She gave her knot one more tug, and then turned to Klaus. Now, she said, and then threw open the caravan door. It is often said that you have a room with a view, you will feel peaceful and relaxed, but if the room is a caravan hurling down a steep and twisted road, and the view is an eerie mountain range, racing backward away from you, while a chilly mountain wind stings you in the face, tosses dust into your eyes, then you will not feel one bit of peace and relaxation. Instead, you will feel horror and panic that the Blydares felt when Violet opened the door. For a moment, they could do nothing but stand still, feeling the wild tillering of the caravan and looking up at the odd square peaks of the Mortman Mountains. Who said that?
Me.
And hearing the grinding of the caravan's wheels as they rolled over the rocks and tree stumps. But then Violet shouted, "Now!" once more, and both siblings snapped into action. Klaus leaned out the window and began to pour the mixture of the black-strap molasses, wild clover, honey, corn syrup, aged balsamic vinegar, apple butter, strawberry jam, caramel sauce, maple syrup, butterscotch topping, maraschino liqueur, virgin and extra virgin olive oil, lemon curd, dried apricots, mango chutney, creme de la noche, tamarind paste, hot mustard, marshmallows, cream corn, peanut butter, grape preserves, saltwater taffy, condensed milk, pumpkin pie filling, and glue onto the closest wheels, while his sister tossed the hammocks out the door. And if you read anything of the Blyder orphans' lives, which I hope you have not, then you will not be surprised to read that Violet's invention worked perfectly. The hammocks immediately caught the rushing air and swelled out behind the caravan like an enormous cloth balloons, which slowed the caravan down quite a bit, the way you would run much slower if you're being dragged something behind you, like a knapsack or a sheriff. The sticky mixture fell on the spinning wheels, which immediately began to move with less ferocity, the way you might run with less ferocity if suddenly you found yourself running in quicksand through lasagna. The caravan slowed down, and the wheels spun less wildly. Within moments, the two Blydares were traveling at a much more comfortable pace. "It's working!" Klaus cried. "We're not done yet," Violet said. and walked over to the small table in which overturned in the confusion. When the blighters were at the Cliggery Carnival, the table had come handy in a place to sit and make plans. But now in the Mountains, where'd he come from? Mortman Mountains, it would come in handy for a different reason. Violet dragged the table over to the door. Now that the wheels were slowing down, she said, we can use this as a brake. Klaus dumped the last of the mixture out of the pitcher and turned to his sister. How? He said. But Violet was already showing him how. Quickly, she lay on the floor and, holding the table by its legs, dangled it out of the caravan so it dragged onto the ground. Immediately, there was a loud scraping sound, and the table began to shake roughly in Violet's hands. She had held the fast, forcing the table to scrape against the rocky ground and slow the caravan down even more. The swaying of the caravan became gentler and gentler, and fallen items owned by the carnival employees stopped crashing, and then with one last whine, the wheels stopped altogether, and everything was still. Violet leaned out the door and stuck the table in front of one of the wheels so it couldn't start rolling again, and then stood up and looked at her brother. We did it, Violet said. You did it, Klaus said. The entire plan was your idea. He put down the pitcher on the floor and wiped his hands on a fallen towel. Don't put down that pitcher, Violet said, looking around the wreckage of the caravan. We should gather up as many useful things as possible. We'll need to get this caravan moving uphill if we want to rescue Sunny. And reached the headquarters, Klaus added. Count?
Hola.
What?
Hola.
Count?
Hola.
Well, has the map we found, but I remembered that the headquarters in the Valley of the Four Draughts, near the source of the stricken stream. It'll be very cold there. Well, there's plenty of clothing, Violet said, looking around. Let's grab everything we can and organize it outside. Klaus nodded in agreement and picked up the pitcher again, along with several items of clothing that had fallen on the heap at the top of the small hand mirror that belonged to Colette. Staggering from carrying so many things, he walked out of the caravan behind his sister, who was carrying a large bread knife, 3 heavy coats, and an ukulele that Hugo used to play sometimes in lazy afternoons. The floors of the caravan creaked as the boy stepped outside, into the misty and empty landscape that realized how fortunate that they had been. The caravan had stopped right at the edge of one of the odd square peaks of the mountain range. The Mortman looked like a staircase heading up in the clouds or down a veil of thick gray mist, and the caravan had kept going in the same direction. The 2 boyders would have toppled over the peak and fallen down through the mist to the next stair far, far below. But to one side of the caravan, the children could see the waters of the stricken stream, which were an oddish gray-black color, and moved slowly and lazily downhill like a river of spilled oil. Had the caravan swerved to one side, the children would have been dumped into the dark and filthy waters. It looks like the break worked just in time, Violet said quickly. No matter where the caravan would have gone, we would have been finished. Klaus nodded in agreement and looked around at the wilderness. It will be difficult to navigate the caravan out of here, Klaus said. You'll have to invent a steering device and some sort of engine, Violet said. That will take some time. We don't have any time, Klaus said. If we don't hurry, count,
Hola.
we'll be too far away and we'll never find Sunny. We'll find her, Violet said firmly, and put down the items she was carrying. Let's go back into the caravan and look for... But before Violet could say what to look for, she was interrupted by an unpleasant crackling noise. The caravan seemed to moan, and then slowly began to roll toward the edge of the peak. The boyders looked down and saw that the wheels had smashed the small table, so there was nothing to stop the caravan from moving again. Slowly and awkwardly, it pitched forward, dragging the hammocks behind it, and it neared the edge of the peak. Klaus leaned down to grab hold of the hammock, but Violet stopped him. It's too heavy, she said. We cannot stop it. We can't let it fall off the peak, Klaus cried. We'd be dragged down too, Violet said. Klaus knew his sister was right, but still he wanted to grab the drag chute Violet had constructed. It is difficult when faced with a situation you cannot control to admit that you can do nothing. And it was difficult for the boyders to stand and watch the caravan roll over the edge of the peak. There was one loud creak as the back wheels bumped against the mound of the dirt, and then the caravan disappeared into absolute silence. The biter stepped forward to peer over the edge of the peak. But it was so misty that the caravan was only a ghostly rectangle getting smaller and smaller as it faded away. Why isn't there a crash? Klaus asked. The drag chute's slowing it down, Violet said. Just wait. The siblings waited, and after a moment there was a muffled boom. Far below, the caravan met its fate. And in the mist, the children could not see a thing, but they knew the caravan and everything inside it were gone forever. And indeed, I have never been able to find its remains, even after months of searching the area with only a lantern and a rhyming dictionary for company. It seems that even the countless nights of battling snow gnats and praying the batteries would not run out, it is my fate that some of my questions will never be answered. Fate is a strange, unpopular restaurant filled with odd waiters who bring you things never asked for and don't always like. When the Boyders were very young, they would have guessed that their fate was to grow up in happiness and contentment with their parents in their Boyder mansion, but now both the mansion and their parents were gone. When they were attending Proof Rock Preparatory School, they had thought that their fate was to graduate alongside their friends the Quagmires, but they hadn't seen the academy or the two triplets in a very long time. And just moments ago had it looked like Violet and Klaus' fate had been to fall off a peak into a stream, but now they were alive and well, but far away from their sisters without a vehicle to help them find her ever again. Violet and Klaus moved closer to one another and felt the icy winds of the Mortman Mountains blow down the road less traveled and give them goosebumps. They looked at the dark and swirling waters of the stricken stream, and they had looked down the edge of the peak into the mist, and then looked at one another and shivered. Not only had their fates they had avoided, but all the mysterious fates that lay ahead. Dun 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 dun. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. I will be checking to see how many views I get, so I should be getting enough views that I think my whole class is watching. But I hope you're watching to the end, not just viewing it and then letting it go, because it's a good book. And I will be picking up, if we come back to school, I will be picking up right where I left off in the reading so that we could continue. So please make sure you're watching. That's it for chapter 1. Thank you, Eli, for helping out wherever you are. Oh, there he is. All right, there's Eli. Thanks for helping out a little bit, and maybe he'll return some other time to help us fill in the blanks and to join us for Lemony Snicket Series of Unfortunate Events, Book 10, The Slippery Slope. All right, bye, Eli.
Bye.
Bye, class.